He took voluntary retirement as Director of Income Tax, International Tax, Mumbai on 2013. In his key positions in IRS, that is Indian Revenue Service, he is a member of Dispute Resolution Panel Mumbai. Twice he was the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals Mumbai, Secretary and Departmental Representation in Settlement Commission Mumbai, Director, International Taxation, and he was a member of different committees. He was a faculty for 4 years in National Academy of Direct Taxes, the apex training body of IRS. He was in charge of assessment of large corporate groups and in charge of investigation wing. Also in charge of computerization of PAN and tax accounting. Kuntal was a member of the Canada International Development Agency, CIDA, project on widening of tax base undertaken by the Government of India. He's such an important man, but his CV is not so big. He's written articles and in publications like International Law Journal, Tax Sutra, and Chamber of Commerce, Chamber of Tax Consultants. His posts on latest tax trends, GAAR, POEM, etc., on LinkedIn and Facebook. Conference. He's attended global conferences organized by International Fiscal Association Global Transfer Pricing Conference of PwC. Lectures and seminars by, he has given lectures in seminars by CII, ASSOCHAM, Chamber of Tax Consultants, Tax Sutra, and so on. Currently, he is also a member of Direct Taxes Committee at IMC. And he is married to a very charming and graceful lady who's, you can see on the picture. She's sitting next to him is Lopamudra Sen, who is a senior teacher, Cathedral in John Connors School. And I just wanted to announce that he's introducing two guests today. I had asked him if he wanted. One is Mr. Firoz Gimi and one is Mr. Zaki Haji Boy. I think they must be on the screen somewhere because I can only see 4 or 5 at a time. But now I present to you Mr. Kuntal Kumar Sen. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bon. Thanks a lot. It's delighted to be in your midst. And only thing I will contest that all CVs make people look illustrious. So don't be carried away by the CV. The fact is that I'm really, really delighted, first, to be with amongst you all in a social setup, which is badly missing these days. And thanks all of you for giving me this opportunity. And second, the wonderful friend Mohan. And Mohan, let me tell you that we are missing all the action at Waterhouse in this lockdown. This one thing that we're missing badly is the action at Waterhouse. And I have Lopa with me, my wife. So now, this I just proposed to be just a chat, right? So some very transformational events are happening in the world of tax. And India is also not untouched by it. Recently, you must have heard about this scheme, which is being launched under the policy mission, Transparent Taxation, Honoring the Honest Taxpayer by the Prime Minister. In simple terms, this scheme means the faceless assessment. So I hope all of you are aware of this. It's soon going to be the new normal. So I thought that I will just sensitize you to this scheme. And another important aspect that is coming in, and that's part of your global exchange, that is exchange of information among the different countries of the world. So these are the two things, which India has recently launched, and this is going to really transform the way the department administers taxation and the way we have to comply with. Just before I go into this scheme, and just feel free to interrupt me anytime you want. Now, this is part of a broader global mission that was started way back in 2011. What had happened, we all must have noticed, because of this phenomenal expansion in digitization, all commerce, our business models, the way we work, the way we communicate became so intensely digitalized that suddenly, even the advanced countries of the world, that means G20. And please tell me if I'm using a jargon which is not understandable, because we are used to using jargons. Please let me know so that I can simplify it. So G20 countries, then OECD countries, basically Western European countries, and some invitees, among which India is also there. So they sat down to solve this problem, which had suddenly cropped up because of this massive digitization and change in business models, as a result of which there was massive savings of tax by corporates. So this is called a phenomena of no taxation. Now these MNCs were managing their affairs in such a manner, it was perfectly legitimate. There's nothing illegitimate about it. Let me be clear about it. But they had spread out their global chains, their supply and value chains, spread all over the world, right? In such a manner that in all these jurisdictions where they had this supply and value chains, so the tax was being paid either at a very low rate or at no taxes. So this had led to a sharp fall in the revenues of these countries, advanced countries. So to tackle this, they thought of having an international, multinational, multilateral project, which is called, I would request you to again, independently surf on this in the Google, is BEPS. In this acronym of this project, this mission is called BEPS, which stands for Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Activities. BEPS, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. As part of this project, so that there is no base erosion from collection of revenue by taxation, and there is no profit shifting from high tax jurisdictions to low tax jurisdictions or to no tax jurisdictions. So they came out with 15 action plans. Right? I'm not going into that. So, and the basic overarching objectives of these 15 action plans were threefold. Basic was transparency. That they thought that both the business and the tax administration should function in an environment which is transparent. Transparency. Second, they said that there's a lot of inconsistencies in the tax policies of different jurisdictions. India taxes its citizens in a manner which is different from how US does, how UK does, or even how Africa does. So they thought through this project, they tried to bring in this element of coherence. So whenever one country formulates its tax policies, it should be largely coherent to the international policy. And third is the issue of substance. So substance means wherever you are having your business, you should have a substance there. You should have sufficient number of active people working in that location. Number one, that is substance. Number two, you should have sufficient investment in that jurisdiction. So that you should not create an entity in a particular jurisdiction only to benefit from paying of taxes. So friends, so this project, now again, I will repeat these three principles: transparency, coherence, and substance. India also a signatory to this. So this came out in 2015. And now being a signatory to this, India is also, you must have noticed, over a period of time, in the last 4 or 5 years, brought in a lot of reforms in the tax administration. In the indirect taxes regime, GST being a very principal, very visible such reform. So in the direct tax portion, now what they did is that, so I will come to that. I will not come to the various other steps that they have taken in the interest of time. But I thought, because these two, which I mentioned in the beginning, that faceless assessment and automatic exchange of information is really going to change our behavior. This calls for a change in our fiscal behavior, as I would call it. How we transact business, how we interact with the tax department, right? How we manage our tax affairs. Not only that, how we manage our business affairs, So I thought that I will just concentrate on these two during this interaction. So what is this faceless assessment, which is now doing the buzz, and it's already is already on the rails. It's already executed, implemented. Now imagine how you deal with the income tax department now for an assessment. What do? That when you receive a notice from your officer, you know that Mr. X is my officer. He has a territorial jurisdiction over my cases. You receive an income tax notice asking you to give details A to Z. Point one. Point two, asking you to appear before him on a certain date, either you personally or through your authorized representative. Then the same officer, what he does, based on the facts available with him, right? And then whatever you have given to him, and whatever in these hearings that have emerged, the same officer passes your assessment order. Right? But now this is going to change. In this faceless scheme, first, this thing is that it is part of that transparency project. You don't have to interact directly with your officer now. There will be no direct interface with the income tax officer, or for that matter, anyone in the hierarchy, even his superior. That's one big point. Then how is it going to happen? It's all going to happen online. I will just come briefly to that, the structure of the project. So this is, I'm saying that, the big change that is coming in. So, but then this also adds one more challenge to us, because you will not have the benefit of knowing the officer, one, and because you will have very limited opportunities to personally appear. Probably now you will need a better, efficient digital communication with your taxpayer to make your point. That's one, that's one challenge, and there one behavioral change we have to bring in. Just the way what we are doing now, that this work from home, this virtual meetings, we have very seamlessly catapulted into this new system. So probably for the income tax compliance also we'll have to do that. That's point one. Point two. Now, as you've noticed, we all of us know that where our offices, income tax offices are located, where our assessments made. In the context of Bombay, we know whether it is in a Churchgate building, whether it is in a Churney Road building, whether it is in Lower Parel, all those we know that. And we know that who is our officer. Now this fixed, stable jurisdiction is going to end. Now, the jurisdiction will be dynamic. The cases can be done now by any officer in the country, not by current territorial officer. This is again a very, very big change coming in. Third, again from the point of view of transparency, as when I was explaining the present system, in the present system, only that one assessing officer is the investigator, the judge, the jury, and also the prosecution. Because he alone does everything. He's a one-man army. Now this system of one-man army is being given a go-by. In the present new faceless system, right, that the assessment, your assessment, our assessment will be done by a team of units. There will be 4 units which together will frame the assessment. I'll come to that, what are these 4 units will be and what are the functions and how we have to change our behavior to interact with this in a completely, identity blind scenario. So that's the third change. To recap, one is that no direct interface with the officer. A dynamic jurisdiction, you will not have a fixed assessing officer. You will not know your assessing officer. Third is a team assessment. That means instead of dealing with 1 unit, you may have to deal with 3-4 units. And the fourth will be, again, now these units will be based on functional specialization. Each of these units will have specialists attached to it and they will discharge their job. Unlike the present system, where the assessing officer has to be, a jack of all trades and master of none. So this is going to be a new normal so far as your assessment is concerned. Now, it doesn't end here. Now, there are always, post-assessment work also action. What about refunds? What about collection of demands? Right? What about, the errors in your orders which have to be rectified? Right? But then once that assessment is done, all these post-assessment functions will again, devolve back to your territorial officer. So when the assessment is done, all the post-assessment functions will remain as they are now with your territorial officer. Any questions? Anything you want or any thoughts on what I have said so far? I hope it's clear. Or if you have any doubts?
You said the assessment will be done at the locally, is it?
End of the session.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Does this apply to all past assessments or current and future?
All assessments. Future
You mean
as
the
well as
ones who
current.
are done already?
Yeah. Wherever a notice has been issued, so the assessments will be done under this system.
But if there is no notice and it's passed and closed, it's okay.
If it is closed, it's okay. But if no notice has been made and the period for issue of the notice is pending, then also it will become in the new scheme.
It can be reopened.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
So all proceedings, which are there on the table as of today, right, are covered by this.
Okay, we can continue and then have a Q&A in the end.
Sure, yeah. So now, I will now come to these units so that just to give you an idea about how we have to deal with this. So now under this faceless scheme, there will be 4 units, right, of the income tax assessment function. Now just to make it clear, this faceless, this faceless mechanism is only for assessment functions, right? As I told you, all post-assessment functions will revolve back to the territorial officer, your current officer, in other words. Now, so this will be handled by one authority they have created, which is the National E-Assessment Authority, NEAC, right? So that will be the focal body which will handle all this, which will monitor and handle all these assessments under this scheme. And this will be the only point of contact with the taxpayer. Taxpayer doesn't have to interact with any other body but this National E-Assessment Center, right? So the notice, which suppose that you have to, the notice has to be issued by the income tax department. This notice will be issued by this authority to you, right? And your response to the notice also has to be given to this authority, to that authority only, NEAC. Now, what the NEAC will do? Now, NEAC has under its regional e-assessment centers, right? And each of these reassessment centers will have 4 units, right? One will be the assessment unit. Second unit will be the verification unit, right? Third will be the technical unit. And the fourth will be the review unit. So your assessment has to pass or will pass through either all 4 units or a combination of these units, right? So now what will happen? Now once a return is filed, right? Now this return will be put through an algorithm. It's completely digitized, and this return will select the cases for selection, for scrutiny. Well, as you are, I think you are all aware, only 1 to 2% of cases are scrutinized these days. But currently, the basis of selection of these cases for scrutiny is substantially digital, substantially, by software, but again, it has manual elements. So this scheme completely abolishes the manual element of selection. No officer, there will be no human intervention in selection of our cases for further scrutiny, right? So now, once the algorithm, which is developed and maintained by this National E-Assessment Center, picks up a case for scrutiny based on its own, module, then it will come to the assessment unit, one of the assessment units, and you will not know which assessment unit is that. there are 16 regional centers, and it can be in any of these assessment units. This assessment unit will then, will pass a draft order, right? Or request again the national center to make some verifications. Now, unlike the present system where the assessment unit itself makes the verification, because there is a conflict of interest in that, because he will be biased while making this verification, because he has already made a point, and he will try to establish that point, come what may, to do away with this. Now it will go back to the National E-Assessment Center. Now again, based on the report of the assessment unit, National Assessment Unit will give it for verification to one of the verification units anywhere in the country for verification of the points which the assessment unit has mentioned, right? So again, this will be done by the National E-Assessment Center. Again, I may come back to that point here, both for the taxpayer, the department, as well as the assessment officer, the officials of the department, this NEAC remains the only point of contact. Now, the assessment unit cannot directly communicate with the verification unit. No, it has to again go back to the National E-Center and then gives its requisition for a verification, and then the National E-Center will give it to the verification unit. Similarly, now this is the verification. As we all know, the tax matters are very complex. They are very technical in many cases, and there's lots of judicial churning of judicial precedents. So what will happen? Now, suppose that while the process the verification unit says there are some technical points which are arising, which the verification unit is not competent to do. Verification unit's job is only to verify. So now then they will go back to the National E-Assessment Center and say, hey center, please now refer it to the technical unit for clarification on these points from the technical point of view. Then again, National E-Assessment Center will allocate this part of the technical verification to again any of the units anywhere in India, right? So based on these assessment units identification of issues, verification by the verification unit, and then giving of technical inputs by the technical unit, finally now a draft order will be passed by the assessment unit, because with all these matter, the National E Center will send all these results of this to the assessment unit, which had originated the process of your assessment. Now then, based on all these findings, he will pass an assessment order. But mind you, that will be a draft order. Unlike now when he passes a final order, because this draft order will again then send back to the National EAC. And then National EAC has again another software, another module, by which it will run this draft order in that module to see whether it needs a review. Whether the assessment unit or the verification unit or the technical unit, which are the interim processes, have missed out on any point or made a mistake. So based on the algorithm, if the computer says yes, it deserves a review, then it will be sent to the review unit. And then after the review unit passes the order, gives its final verdict on this, then this order will not go back to the same assessment unit where from it originated. It will be again sent to another assessment unit in the country to finalize the order. So friends, this is the framework of the current faceless assessment. Here you see, in any of these stages, there is no scope for either you or me or our authorized representative to personally go and make our point. All these, submissions and our arguments have to be given in an online format. And then this again, of course, it does have a scope for a personal hearing. In this case, the personal hearing will mean a virtual hearing, a video conference. For that, a taxpayer can apply to the National E-Assessment Center, say, look here, this is a case which I have to, I want to represent personally. There is no way, this is a very complex case. This is there are voluminous documents. Right? The structure of the companies is very complex, right? Or my value chain, my global chain is very complex. So in that case, you will have to make an application, and this application, the National E-Assessment Center and the Central Board of Direct Taxes will go into this application, and then they will either approve or they will reject this request. So it's not necessarily that if you have made a request, which is a given now, that personal hearing is the basis of our assessment. Although the e-assessment is going on, it's not that e-assessment process is also going on. But personal hearing, in fact, informally also people go and have the scope to explain, because you're assessing officer. So if the National E-Assessment Center finds that yes, your request for personal hearing, in this case it is virtual hearing, is okay, then they will allow that, or if it's not okay, they will not allow that. So under this process now, the order will come back to the assessment unit, and then it will be served on you. But post that, whatever actions remain after this, then that will remain with your rest. This is what they were calling it now, the residual jurisdiction. So these are the terms now which will be slowly prevalent, that residual jurisdiction. One is that a faceless jurisdiction, the other is the residual jurisdiction. That means your old territorial jurisdiction. So friends, so this is a scheme which is coming up. Coming up means it's already is through. So this will need, in my view, 2-3 behavioral changes, right? One is that we have to enhance our ability to communicate digitally in a more efficient manner, right? So if you are presenting cases yourself, or your chartered accountants, or your consultants, please engage with them and see that how you deal with this, right? Because now in the submissions, because see, we have the arguments are very simple, but establishing the argument is very difficult. You have to depend on your documents, your analysis, your employees' statements, and so many other things. So how you do that? So that will be very, very important thing. How you make your submissions in an environment like this, where you don't get the opportunity for a personal hearing. So here, what I will suggest is that you ask your representatives to devolve. There are many tools available with Android, with everywhere apps, which enables you to put hyperlinks, submission, which we do not have this now. Or to flag your important points in the submission, digitally flag it, digitally highlight it, right? Or digitally compress it, screenshots. So these will be very, very important now. So that is the faceless assessment. So we will need a lot of behavioral changes, and then another expertise will be, how to build up a case to justify a personal video conference hearing. That is another ability which you have to develop, because it's not given now. It's subject to the approval of the authority. So that's another thing, mental skill that we have to develop if we really want a virtual hearing. But overall, the objective of this scheme is very noble, to make it very transparent, and so that there is no interface between the taxpayer and the department, number one. And number two, this assessment is being made by not one officer, but a team of officers. So it's not constrained by only one perspective. It's an expanded horizon in which this order is being passed. But as you said, every scheme has its own challenges. So till the time it stabilizes, probably we'll have to face these challenges, and we have to enhance our ability. Now I am coming to the second part, which also needs our behavioral change before we get to the question answer session. What's the time? Yeah. So that is, the exchange of information. Now, the 98 countries of the world, that is one, and internally also in our country, various regulators, RBI, SEBI, Central Board of Direct Taxes, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, right? Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Enforcement Directorate. So one is that global exchange of information. So that will happen automatically, that is going to happen. These 98 countries of the world, India being a signatory, they have agreed to share information with each of these countries, right, on an automatic manner. So far, this information was shared only on request of particular one jurisdiction, but now it will be shared automatically. As a result of which, see, in the position of the tax department, there will be a fund, there will be a rich repository of all information from various jurisdictions, of your transactions, of your travel abroad, of the expenses spent on children's education. I'm mentioning those which may be relevant for people like you and me. Right? So now this will be at the disposal of the Indian tax authorities. And maybe when your return of income is put into this algorithm, because this algorithm, this module will have all this information stored in. If there is any mismatch, if there is any ratio discrepancy, probably you will be asked to explain that. So that is from the international front. In the internally, now recently, see how these things are evolving. Recently, Central Board of Direct Taxes, which handles income tax matters, and Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, which handles GST and import duties, they have signed a memorandum of understanding stating that they will share information on a regular basis. Your GST returns will be matched with your TDS returns. Your GST returns will be matched to your income tax returns or your tax payments. Similarly, the invoices, the input credit that you have asked for in the GST will be matched to the turnover you have shown in your income tax returns. So there will be massive exchange of information within the country also. Similarly, Ministry of Corporate Affairs will share its information. SEBI, that is one. And again, another chunk of information which will have to be shared is about high value transactions, which is already there, but in this process is being now deepened and is being intensified. Your foreign travels, right? Your electricity consumption, your purchase of very high value luxury articles. So all these now will be at the disposal of the tax department in a more efficient manner than it is presently now. Because recently the finance secretary shared in a which we were all present in a seminar, that this big data is going to be employed only to process this information and match with the declared incomes and expenses or assets of the taxpayers. So there's another automatic exchange of information which also has become very, very crucial. And in our behavior of, while expending money, while, deciding on our travels, we'll have to see that whether we are complying with this or not. And what we are saying to agency A should tally with what we are saying to agency B. So friends, these are the two, I thought there are many others, but these are the two very, very important, very current, very recent, in the last 15 days, 20 days, 1 month back issues, which is going to change the whole ecosystem of tax administration and behavior about compliance. So in the interest of time, I think now this is what I wanted to share with you, because I know that being in the IRS for so many years now outside it, this is going to be a massive change. Probably, we will soon realize when we see that, happening in our own cases. So that's all I had to say. And any questions, any other discussion, it will be it will be a pleasure to participate.
Mr. Sen, if I may start. Yeah, Vicky, with your permission. I just wondered, with all digitalization, would there be a problem with the language? Because, not everybody, which is going to be the language of, thing, because a lot of the regional languages, they cannot really express themselves properly in English. So how would you deal with that?
It's a very, very valid point. Excellent point that you have raised. And this is also what we are telling. This is one of the behavioral changes that I was mentioning.
Yeah.
We are saying is that probably you will need English tuition in your organizations. Or if your chartered accountant is too vernacular in his expression, then he needs some training. Exactly, that's a point. And as of now, it has to be in English. because central government, because direct taxes is a central government department, and it doesn't allow any region, any regional languages.
Yeah.
Maybe over a period of time it may evolve, but at the moment, there's an excellent point that you have mentioned, and we have to really deal with this. Yes, very valid point. Knowledge of English would be very, very important.
Any other
Can
question?
I ask?
Anil, yes, please. Anil.
I'm asking a very, very selfish and a very limited question. About 3-4 years back, my mother's NSS, for the postal savings certificate worth something 10, 15, 20 lakhs, something was in cash. They insisted on cutting a TDS of 1.5 lakh rupees, 10%. 3 years, I've gone to the office in Parel. I haven't got it. She's 91. So what does one do? Now it's COVID, I can't even go there.
No, see, in a case like this, there is a portal called, please note down CPgram.
Pardon me?
CPgram. Gram, G-R-A-M.
Gram.
So this is a Prime Minister's portal where you can, lodge your complaint. You go to this portal and you lodge your case, and immediately, within 15 days, they will expect a response from the officer who is not attending to your matter.
No, but then he'll take it out in so many other ways, so I doesn't want to bug them. My own father-in-law was the chairman of your CBDT.
Okay.
But I find the department is absolutely, it has to be managed. So one doesn't want to use that. Frankly, yes, I'm aware of that, but I don't want to use it. Is there any other way?
See, then another way you can do is that you can communicate with a helpline with the CPC, Central Processing Center.
CPC. Okay.
You go to this
in Bangalore.
Bangalore, yeah.
Yeah, but Bangalore says contact.
This also, you must have.
Yeah, they're playing tennis. They say contact here. They say contact there.
Yeah, no. So I would say that I will be raising my hands and say yes. Okay. So these are some of the means. Or again, if you are lucky, you can meet the president, the senior most in the hierarchy.
Yeah, that but today COVID came up. Other than that, I've solved it.
No, but they are available on the phones and they are accepting email communications.
Can I ask a question now, Vicky?
Yes, Mohan.
Kuntal, just a few days ago in the paper, in fact today also, company like Toyota is saying your tax laws are so bad, we don't want to invest any further. So in view of what you said the international laws will apply. Why are they speaking like that?
See, these are all individual responses. At the same time, this is one Toyota is saying this, but at the same time, you say that FDI is increasing, in huge numbers day by day. The reliance, the investments, people are flocking to invest in companies. So it's all, maybe because of individual experiences. But as I do believe that yes, there is room for improvement. But these are the steps, as I tell you. These are the steps which the government is slowly taking to, come up to speed with international standards. As I told you, it's all part of the BEPS project. Right? So transparency, coherence, and substance. So probably, this coherence may be missing in the business model of Toyota. Maybe there were some individual tax issues which they are not able to solve. But again, come to this issue. See, if the Toyota approaches me, I will look into its dispute. What is the dispute? Because the government of India is also encouraging, that is another of the BEPS action plan, which is not subject matter today, but since you mentioned Toyota, they can go for this in an alternate dispute management mechanism. No, one is that regular, we go to the Commissioner of Appeals, the Tribunal, the High Court, and the Supreme Court. That is one channel. But another channel of disputes is you can enter into advanced pricing agreements. You can go for mutual agreement procedure, right? So there is alternate dispute management system. So I agree with you, but I would say from my experience, these are all individual personal experiences, because there are very positive indications of that how Indian tax administration is working, and things are also working.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question, please?
Yeah, sure.
If you are expecting a refund and yet they are not paying for months and months and months, can we send them a reminder?
Of course.
By letter?
No, but online. Now in the present environment, online.
Online.
Yeah.
We can send them a reminder that this is due for so many months.
Yeah. See, what I will suggest here now, each of you download this, latest administrative handbook issued by the CBDT.
Okay.
So it has, contact numbers of all the officers in India, right? Place, location wise. So there you get, these email IDs also, right?
Okay.
And one more thing is that if it doesn't work, through your field-to-field contact, then there are two methods again, two avenues. One is e-Nivaran. There is again, you go to this e-Nivaran site where you can get your grievances redressed, or as CP Gram. But somebody has a bad experience or somebody has a good experience with CP Gram.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Anybody else? Kamlesh bhai?
Yeah, I have a question. After Kamlesh bhai.
Oh, okay.
Kamlesh has gone.
I want to ask you, don't you think this is too much technology based? Even in today's thing, your speech was cut off 3 times. If the internet is not going to work that good, this whole thing may collapse. Secondly, it looks like operation successful, but the patient dies. Because I think they are doing it too abruptly. Maybe they should have started with the salary class to start with. Because if you do not transition, you are going to put the whole system into such a mess that an assessment from Bombay man, somebody doing in Andhra, would think entirely different. At the end of the day, they're a bunch of people and they're all culture, language, upbringing, they're all different. And just by going through a book and saying, okay, I standardize, then you don't need anybody. You don't need them also. The computers can take the decision. So I think they need to transition this with a lot of thoughtfulness.
Very, very valid points. I do appreciate, yes, very, very valid points. And, these are the concerns, both of us have, taxpayers, as well as consultant, even the government also. But just to give you a background, which I didn't mention, because, this faceless scheme, there was a pilot last year, probably that has gone unnoticed, under which, 58,000 cases were selected. Maybe, after that, they have now rolled it out for the entire nation. So that is one. And secondly, now the government is on an awareness drive. If you see the government senior officers, chairman CBDT, the members CBDT, regional chief commissioners, they are all over the place, webinars, seminars, meetings, one-to-one, to clarify all these concerns. And third, what I will mention to you, in fact, because I am an IRS, ex-IRS, so now the IT infrastructure of the income tax department, let me tell you, is very robust. It's very robust. It's one of the best among the government departments. So the concern that from the hardware or from the functioning, physical functioning of the software that you are raising, probably that will not happen, because the government's that IT infrastructure is very, very robust. But as you said, these concerns are very valid, and it's an evolving situation, and we learn along the way. That's all I can say. But the government's intentions are very good. This is one, this is again, coming back to the Toyota example. This is one way of, aligning us, this coherence of the BEPS project, align us with the best international practices. Where, with this initial, this teething troubles, we can, proudly say that we are a very transparent tax administration, whereas there is very little human intervention, right? There is no room for any, hanky-panky at every stage of the assessment. But of course, as you see, Kamlesh, it's a very valid concern. But I think for a period of time, we will see that yes, there's something good that has happened. That's, that's my impression.
Excellent.
See, this happens with all projects. I remember way back, I was in charge of this allotment of PAN. Lopa knows that, how we overcame that. People were very, very reluctant to give forms. Then, they were very reluctant to use PAN. They were apprehensive. Iska kya hoga? But gradually, the PAN became a part of our DNA. Same thing about the Aadhaar, right? We had so many, apprehension to Aadhaar. Now it is part of our DNA. So this is how we Indians, that way we are very, very resilient. Of course, I am getting a bit philosophical, and we rise to the occasion, and then somehow we, get it into a system.
Vicky, can I ask a question?
Anil, can I ask?
Oh, sorry,
I have a
Anil,
question,
yes.
Vicky.
Yes, Anil, go on. Yeah.
Yes, Anil.
Yeah, I
Anil,
just
go
have
ahead.
one question for Mr. Sen. A is, you mentioned about this virtual conference we can have for our grievances. Is it necessary for the SSE himself to be present? Because I think it's a very complicated system now. We are used to the old system of tax administration. Will our chartered accountants adequately be permitted to represent us in the matters?
Yeah, that's again one behavioral change, as I was telling you. This will require, because I have been attending some virtual hearings now, because I represent cases before the tribunal, before the Commissioner of Appeals, in alternate dispute resolution panels. So what they are doing is that you have to first give them, while requesting for this hearing, the names of the persons whom you want to attend to these hearings, right? And then just 2 days before the hearing, they send you a link. Mostly they are sending this WebEx link, and only those persons whose names are there, which you have given, they are allowed to access login through this link. But as I told you, your again apprehension is correct. We have to really change the way we create our submissions or our arguments, our paper books. That has to be a huge change. And please, ask your chartered accountants to get you these tools, which we are mentioning, putting up links, hyperlinks in your submission, then ability to flag, ability to highlight, ability to have screenshots. And so
I think our chartered accountants itself will need training, substantial training first before we go to him.
Exactly.
Because, I'm also a chartered accountant, and I used to handle tax practice all my life. I don't do it anymore. But it's a substantial change. It's like GST. GST system now works reasonably well in spite of the problems, but it's a total change. Total change. And I think they need to be first more educated than anybody than we do.
And as somebody mentioned, the knowledge of English. Please check.
Knowledge of English.
Yeah, whether how good he is in English.
Oh.
I agree with you.
Manoj, your question?
Yeah, Mr. Sen, in these kind of technological leaps, India has had the advantage of being late to the party, but then we had the quantum jump probably at times better than the countries were, earlier with these systems. So for this particular method, are we better off than, let's say, the Western countries, the US, the UKs of the world?
Oh, yes. This faceless assessment is there in very few of the countries in a very limited way. In this large scale and sweeping way that all cases, I think we are the first. We are the first. It is there in other countries in a small, limited manner. See, same thing, this applies to our, this big data analytics also, which is the matching of information. There also, we are, one of the topmost in the world. Just to tell you now, for this, this BEPS project, there are peer reviews because this is an international project, It is not binding on anyone. You have only a signatory to a global multilateral arrangement, right? So occasionally there are peer reviews that how is India doing on automatic exchange of information, right? So what will happen in the peer review, other countries will, evaluate India's performance and India will evaluate the other country's performance. So this mechanism is keeping all countries on their toes. Otherwise, there'll be a peer review report which will be adverse, which may affect you, international sentiments. So that way, I think we are very, very good at, this, and this faceless is really a path-breaking step or method, whichever you describe it. Just to tell you, this alternate dispute resolution mechanism, also India one of the first to introduce it at the national level. If I'm not exceeding the time, I'll just take a minute. This alternate dispute resolution is normally for a dispute arising between two countries. Right? You have a parent, Amazon is parent, and Amazon India is there, and there is a dispute between the two countries, and then you go for this alternate dispute resolution. But there is a unit called DRP, Dispute Resolution Panel, which is one such alternate dispute resolution mechanism in India nationally available. And this DRP is also, I think, this is the only instance of a country which is having a national dispute. Of course, I'm not talking about arbitration. Arbitration, they're all there. That is the part of general law. But as a tax mechanism in the income tax statute, this is also India as a pioneer.
So will this also help in removing the grudge that the tax department officials not based in the metro cities have with the people in the metros?
Yes. So one of the, if you have noticed the PM's address while he was launching this scheme, he said that in so many words that it is a step not only for transparent taxation but to honor the honest taxpayer, so that there is no malafide intent, no malafide action. You're not subject to malafide action because of the conduct of officers. But let's see how it pans out. But the intentions are very noble, and the mechanism also looks to be that yes, it will be able to serve the objective.
Sir, do you think it's going to increase the tax revenue for the government?
I think so. I think so. Because from my experience, I find that everything is so manual, right? And one person based. So what they happen is that they look into issues which are not relevant, and in the process they miss the issues which are very, very, very relevant, right? So, but the computer is so so designed that the issue that we are missing, the department is missing because of various reasons, because of a huge workload, lack of expertise, lack of knowledge, access to research, lack of access to experts. So I think yes. So this will help in deepening the tax base. So there is a concept called widening the tax base. You have taxpayers, and there is a process of deepening the tax base. My feeling is that it will help in the deepening process.
Any last questions from anybody?
I think you finish off because people will want to.
I will ask you one last question. It's a general question, not necessarily to do with taxation. Mr. Sen, the GDP is down, the economy is down, and still the stock market is soaring. And I agree, the markets look ahead, they say, but the market may have presumed that at some point COVID is going to go away. But COVID is not going away. It's only rising now. So going forward, what do you feel? How will the markets behave? Because COVID is still there and very strong. And what do you feel of? What is your point?
See, what is happening is that my observation, very, very personal observation. I may be wrong. My observation is that present now, in the present moment, no one is looking what is happening now. It's people are doing crystal ball gazing. So all the investments that are coming to India, you see that is only the view to looking at the bright future or a better future. You look at this example of Tesla. Tesla's net value is much less than any other, the big ones, Amazon's or Google or Microsoft. But Tesla shares are shooting up only because these investors are investing, looking into the future. When the electric vehicle will come, driverless vehicle will come, or the space tourism will pick up. So my feeling is that is the sentiment which is working, to drive the stock exchange.
Will the party last?
Huh?
Will the party last?
So that's, the stock exchange, you never know.
Can I say something?
Sure,
In
economics,
for my kids, I always teach something called a rational expectation. Whenever there is a crisis like, a depression or an inflation, there is always a rational expectation. Maybe this time it's an irrational expectation that we are expecting it to come out so fast from the slump. Could be, I don't know, it's just on a lighter vein, but it could be an irrational expectation.
See, exactly, this is called irrational exuberance.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
At times, those who are stock exchange experts, they said at times stock market is driven by irrational exuberance. Actually, we are so bullish about the future that maybe you are investing.
So now I know who my next speaker is going to be down the road. That is Mrs. Sen.
Yes.
Because we need to know about the economy as well.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. This was an excellent talk. We really enjoyed, and we learned so much from you. And but I will save the vote of thanks to to somebody else to speak. And in the meanwhile, yeah, I think we are done with the question and answer. So may I request our favorite Rotarian, Sucharita, who's also having a birthday today,
Oh, no.
give the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Yes, I must make a confession. Mr. Sen, normally when we have these talks by financial wizards and experts, I usually tell myself, okay, this is a meeting I'm not going to understand. So I usually just tune off. But I must say, this has been so refreshing because normally they just use a lot of jargon. It's exactly like reading out one of the manuals, and then there is hardly any communication. But today I noticed that you have summarized so logically and put it so simply with absolute clarity, also keeping track of time. And you've been so disciplined, and you've tied up all the loose ends that are in our mind. And I think from your talk, I can see this is a pretty good foolproof method, which will be simpler for all of us. And I can see I am looking myself positively towards this whole change that is going to come up. And I'm sure you have motivated everybody else also to feel the same. It has yet been very engaging, and I feel you've just translated a complex, something that that all of us would just push away, but you've actually translated it into making it meaningful for us. But what happened is, not just did I see your competence in your career and the matter that you're very experienced at, but what stood out also was your modesty, your sensitivity, your consideration, your humility, and your humaneness. And I must say, seeing your smiling wife sitting next to you, I realized that she's a true Ardhangini with you. And I don't know whether it's her teaching that has, as part of osmosis, come to you. But so you have explained it so beautifully to us. But whatever it is, it has been one of our best meetings. And I think something that is really going to benefit all of us. Thank you so much to both of you for being part of us today. Thank you. And it's been a very special birthday gift for me too. I finally understood what the tax department is doing.